Hello from Southern Ontario, Canada Day. Bit of stale news here, but did you see the footage of Alexa Lavoie, Rebel News reporter in Montreal? Was it last week? Pro-Palestinian protests. She went down to cover it in Montreal, did I say? Anyways, long and short of it is, she was chased down the street by what's referred to as Antifa thugs. Just to make a long story short. And she got spray painted, her camera got spray painted. There was one guy there while the Antifa thugs masked and hiding behind opened umbrellas. There was one unmasked white individual there who was like kicking at her at one point. He's the one who spray painted her. The police did nothing. At one point she approached and spoke to a couple of police officers, and the one basically said, "Go home, little girl." Just punked her off. On a couple of occasions, she's running down the street, fleeing, being chased. And at one point, there's two police officers there on pedal bikes, and she's going, "Hey, you just saw what happened. Are you not going to help me out here?" And they just rode away and left her. Now, some background. Rebel News is self-proclaimed far-right independent media. And if I remember correctly, Ezra Levant formed Rebel News in 2015, the same year Trudeau came into power. And Ezra and the Rebel News, I mean, they've been on Trudeau like white on rice. They just won't leave him alone. Freedom of Information Act. Every bit of dirt they can dig out on him, which they don't have any trouble finding, I assure you. But regardless. Twice the Rebel News has taken Trudeau to the federal court because he bars them from his press scrums. He doesn't acknowledge them as legitimate media. And twice the court has said, yeah, they are. They're bona fide. They got everything. They're legit. And you may recall, not sure if it was the first or the second court finding, and it might have been Alexa again, but I don't really remember. Oh. My notes blew away. I guess, well, I'm done with them anyways. I'll get them in a moment here. Anyways, whether it was Alexa or not at one of Trudeau's little podium announcements, said, well, the court just said yesterday, we're bona fide. My words. You're going to answer my questions. The loathing, the naked hatred on Trudeau's face, if you've ever seen the clip, I'm sorry I don't have the ability to call it up. He was, "You people. I don't consider you journalists. Your misinformation regarding the science." I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to quote or paraphrase him. He loathes the Rebel News. I mean, naked hatred. So, let's go back to what happened in Ottawa at the Freedom Protest. You may recall the UN troops came in, 2 plane loads of them. There's no contention or debate or tinfoil involved here. Remember they had the big 4-foot long sticks, all nice and new and shiny white. Alexa Lavoie was at the front of the crowd. The UN troops were kettling the crowd, driving them back down into the square, where later we would see tear gas canisters flying and some other unpleasantries. Alexa was at the front of the crowd with her microphone and cameraman. And one of the UN troops cross-checked her, I believe it was 4 times, giving her good forearms across the chest, and she's like, ah! She's up against the crowd. She's got nowhere to go, right? She just has to take the blows. And there's lots of footage of it. People had their cell phones there. And that's where she was, I better say, struck point blank with the tear gas canister in her upper thigh. I still get enraged when I think about that, because someone had, like, the phone right there. The dude who was cross-checking her, the next guy in line, the next UN troop, kneeled down, leaned around the guy who'd been cross-checking Lavoie, and the tear gas canister, I'm sorry I can't use certain words, struck Alexa point blank in the upper thigh. If you've ever seen that footage, and I wish I could call it up, had the tech ability to do that, the look of glee on the guy who flung the tear gas canister. Trudeau talks about misogyny, misogynists. Ooh, I still get enraged when I think about that. Anyways, my hat's off to Alexa Lavoie. She's a gutsy little gal. Because the next day after that had happened, that incident where she was, well, injured physically, she was out on the streets the next morning limping. And they'd busted the protest up, the Emergencies Act. And what was happening the next morning is Alexa was out on the frozen, overcast streets. What was going on was they'd have 2 UN troops and 1 Canadian police officer, usually OPP, although it might have been a city, Ottawa City Police. So there's the 2 UN troops, and whether again it was a city cop or an OPP, I don't know. And he was saying, you can't come in here, we have this downtown shut down now, you can't come in. And she says, I'm a journalist, I can come in, because journalists have rights that a citizen doesn't under emergency situations and stuff. I'm not going to get into the legalities of it, it's not necessary. And she said, oh, I know, I'm a journalist. You know, and he said, well, show me your press card. So she did. She said, I have my press card, I have my microphone, it says Rebel News, I have, you know. He says, no, you can't come in. You could have just printed that up in the basement for all I know. Yeah, that's how Ottawa was at the time. But, in summation, well, Alexa filed a report with the police in Montreal where they basically said, well, we don't think anything's going to come of it. We doubt we'll be able to identify anyone, and probably threw it in the trash can after she left. My supposition. Anyways, hats off to Alexa Lavoie. She's a gutsy little gal.